about improving education and connecting it directly with the workforce and therefore economic development in the state of Mississippi. We can't continue to grow as we have been. Just this week adding 350 new jobs across the state of Mississippi, particularly in areas like aerospace industry, without an educated workforce. And we've got to do a better job, and so we're talking about how we can add better teachers into the classroom, expand choices and opportunities like charter schools for parents so that their children have a better opportunity of getting the best education available.
Our first speaker today is Governor Phil Bryant, a man who needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. I will tell you that when Governor Bryant was first elected to the governorship, he had not yet taken office, and he took a trip along with the Jackson Chamber Partnership to Houston to take a look at the medical corridor. Dwayne O'Neill did a great job organizing an ability to take a look at what could be here in the Jackson area and how could we do what Houston did as far as becoming a real medical mecca. We already are a medical mecca, but organizing it even more effectively. And Dwayne put together a great trip. The governor went on it, as did a number of other leaders, and the message came out loud and clear. We've got a huge opportunity here. Well, the Jackson Chamber Partnership had already started the ball rolling on a good bit of research, and the governor said, well, could we take that to the next level? Could we do this so that statewide we benefit not just from the growth that comes from the medical industry here in Jackson, but also statewide? And asked if the MEC would undertake, with a grant from the Mississippi Partnership for Economic Development, an independent study with a nationally recognized consulting group about what could happen. Well, that study was released in October, and lots of things can happen. That's what leadership's about. That's what this governor's about, seizing the opportunity after seeing the vision. So please join me in welcoming a man with vision and a man who seizes the day, our Governor, Phil Bryant.
We're going to talk about our great economic development opportunities and educational opportunities. This looks a little large, and if you're in the back of the room, I'm going to help you read it. Educational priorities this year. We call it Education Works, because in fact it does. I can tell you as a small kid from Moorhead, Mississippi, who in about the third grade found out I was dyslexic. I just thought I was dumb. The other kids sort of said he just can't read, and the teacher finally in the fifth grade said, don't say that. Don't you believe that? Because I've seen you, Phil, get up in front of the class and make a speech and talk to them, so I know, well, maybe that was the first harbinger of what I was going to do for a living, but she said, I know you can do that. So we have kids that are now trapped in educational systems that are failing. Let's confront the bold facts. About half of our children, 46% of our third graders, can't read at a third grade level. They're not proficient at a third grade level. And what we normally do is pass them on to the fourth grade. It's like an assembly line. It's sort of like Toyota and Nissan. That's important that they keep that line going, but if something goes wrong, they stop it. And anyone along that line has the opportunity to stop it and say, we're going to fix this before we move forward. One of the things that y'all have helped do that has been remarkable is building blocks. I want to thank you. Blake Wilson and all of you led the way. 4 years ago, this group came together, the business community came together and said, we believe in early childhood education. And not only do we believe in it, but we're going to fund it. We're not going to ask the legislature for money. Now, this year I'm asking them for $3 million to continue this great program that we have. You and I know about 90% of the kids currently today are in some type of daycare center. That's just the way of the world. And so what we got to do is get an educational environment in those centers so those kids can learn and be prepared for kindergarten and be prepared for the third grade, and we can diagnose them and determine if they've got issues for reading. So one of the things that we're going to talk about doing early is our third gate. Now, this is a dynamic move. It scares a lot of people, but what we say, if that child can't read at the third grade level, stop it right there. Don't socially promote him on to the fourth grade. Last night I was watching the speech of the governor of Virginia, and Bob is my friend, and he was saying that they have the same type of thing in the fourth grade as his state of the state. He was saying to Virginians, we've stopped the failure at the fourth grade. And I thought how amazing it is that we're beginning to think alike across America. We can't continue to accept failure. Now, don't get me wrong, there's great teachers and great administrators. And we ought to lift them up. I met a young lady for Teach for America here this morning. They do a fantastic job, and we're going to ask the legislature to help us fund that even more. But we've got to say at that third gate, that third grade level, teach them to read. We've asked the legislature to put $15 million into a program to intervene, to get those dynamic coaches, if you will. And I like to use that analogy because I know a little bit about football. Mark Keenum's here. He knows a little bit about football. And what you do is you get a new coach, and you expect that coach to win. And so we're going to get coaches $15 million worth of them. We're going to go to that third grade, and we're going to say you're going to teach that child to read. Because we're going to make sure that we get Teach for America in there if we have to. And if you can't, then I'm going to recommend to the principal a replacement. We've just got to confront these bold facts. And so that third gate is so very important. Reward teachers. I have this crazy idea that you ought to pay people that really do good more money. It's a radical concept, but I think if they achieve and they move that class forward, and I'm not expecting them to take a class that's failing and make it a star, but have progress. Move them forward, if you will. And so we're going to say that we need merit pay to make sure that if you've got a teacher who is being exceptional, reward that teacher. We got programs already. If you look, Gulfport, Clarksdale, Rankin, and Lamar County, those courageous superintendents have said, I will do that. I will be the pilot program. If you want to pay teachers more, if you want to pay my best teachers more, I'm in. Now, I have an idea next year, if the legislature will help us with this $2 million, you're going to see other superintendents raising their hands saying, my teachers, my good teachers want more. My master teachers can have another level. Nobody's going to get a pay cut. But I don't think in this legislative environment with this governor, you're going to see across-the-board pay raises. That's just not going to happen. You see, we just don't think you ought to just sit down and say, it doesn't matter if you're excelling in your class or you're just showing them videos. We're going to pay you all the same. A great teacher in a great classroom. Pay them more. Make sure we incentivize them. Continue funding ongoing research. As we said in building blocks, I jumped on that first because I'm so excited about it. Attract the best and brightest. $1 million for scholarships for high-performing students. Here's what we do. What happens if your child makes a 28 on the ACT? Law school, medical school, maybe you want to be a journalist like Sia. No, you're trying to steer them towards somewhere else, go into the banking business. You don't want them to be teachers. And so what we've got to say is that child making a 28 on the ACT, take them to the classroom. And for $1 million, I can help a scholarship, a $10,000 a year scholarship for these children to put the best and the brightest in the classroom if they'll teach for 5 years. Now, I'd also like to ask that you make at least a 21 on your ACT before you can become a teacher. Oh, you're going to have shrieking and gnashing of teeth. There are going to be people that say, your Phil Bryant just wants to cause a teacher shortage, and that's what's going to happen. Well, now look, I think I made a 19. And that was in the old dark ages when you didn't have a book to go by and they didn't teach you, My kids started taking it when they were 14. I mean, I thought you just took it once. You just showed up at a designated classroom, you took the ACT, and that was it. And you were forever marked by it, good or bad. If I can make a 19, these kids can make a 21. At least be able to achieve that if you want to be a teacher. And they say, well, what about those kids that can't make a 21? I'm not sure I want them in the classroom. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm not being mean here, but if you can't make a 21, do I want you teaching my children? So we're going to incentivize them. We want kids that are in junior college, in community college. I'm old. Community college that says, I've been here 2 years. I didn't know what my major was, but now I've decided I want to be a teacher. And I'm making a 3.5. I made a 28 on my ACT. I can get a 2-year scholarship at a great university, at a teaching university. And so let's make sure we prepare them to get in there. And then they've got a roadmap to success because they can say, I'm not just going to be stalled out at $40,000. I'm not going to be stalled out. There's a pathway to success that I can follow as a teacher, getting those great teachers in the room. Now, you want to talk about something that really moved things, open enrollment. Oh, I felt the earth move for just a moment there. That means a child can go to any school he wants to. Horror upon horrors. We've got 150 little walls that we build up out there, and we surround these schools, and we say, you can't get in, you can't get out. If you try to get out, if you tell the school you're living with your grandmother so you can go to a better school, we're going to send a detective, almost like a law enforcement officer, out to seek you out and stop that. Knock on your door in the dark of night. That child doesn't live here. He can't go to school here. When did we decide that? You know why? Because the money follows the child. Yeah, I was auditor. I know how that works. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. Money's going to follow the child. But why don't we say, let's take those walls down. Let's let that child, if there's a class, a school across town that he'd like to go to, why on earth would we say, you can't do that? You can only shop at Kroger's. I love Kroger's. But you can't go anywhere else. Better it'd be the Dollar General, because I really love the Dollar General. That's a guy's store, guys. Come on. So you can't go to any place else. That's the only place you can go and buy your groceries. You know, I don't know many things in the world that we say you can't. This is the only place you can go, and we're never going to let you out. Now, here's the key. Listen to me before everybody goes into shock. The accepting school has to be willing to do that, and they have to have the capacity. They have to say, I'll accept 20, 30, 50 kids, and I have the classroom capacity and the teachers to do it, because I'm willing to bring them in. So we're not going to force, it's not going to be a bunch of kids from, oh, heaven's sakes, one school district flooding into another, and them having all of those problems. They've got, you know, today, the Mississippi law says you can do that if both school districts agree. So we have an open enrollment law. It's just impossible to use, because to get both schools to agree to let a child out, to set him free, to let parents make that decision. We say let parents have a choice so a child can have a chance. And you know what we call that too? Competition. You know what those schools losing those kids are going to do? They're going to figure out a way to get better. Now, this is not going to be cheap. It's not going to be free. We asked for roughly $24 million more this year to go into education we did last year. And I'm willing to make those commitments. We're going to keep moving. Workable charter school bill. Look, I was for charter schools when charter schools wasn't cool. 5 years ago, I went to Helena, West Helena, Arkansas, and then I went to New Orleans, and I looked into the faces of those children. Never mind, you can have arguments. We can be here all day long. Go to a charter school and look at those children. Look into their eyes at the hope and the excitement that they know that they have now, that they're going to be able to go to college, that they're succeeding. Now, they go to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they go on Saturday sometimes, and they don't have a football team or a band, but they choose to be there. Their parents stand in line. They go through raffles. Tears flow from their eyes when their children's name are not chosen, not in that raffle. But what we do, not a chance. We're going to keep you there. We're not going to let you out. You're going to harm it. You're going to create private schools. Really? Do you think this governor, this legislature, this lieutenant governor, this speaker in 2013 want to create a private school system using public funds? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. We're trying to help children trapped in failing schools. What we're doing now is simply not working. All right, I know Blake's looked at his watch one time, so we got to move. Next slide. Opportunity scholarships where people can donate, either individuals or corporations can donate, and then we can scholarship a child into a non-public school. That's right, we actually take money that people donate, not out of the general fund, they donate, they get a tax credit for it. I love tax credits and cutting people's taxes. I know some people think corporations don't pay enough taxes. I'm not one of them. But if you want to help that child get into a non-public school, send them there. Now, you got to be below 250% of the poverty level, and you got to be in a DNF school. And again, so the opportunity is to help those children trapped in school. Opportunity scholarships. Florida did it. They put about $35 million back into education. They saved so much money because they'd say your opportunity scholarship's worth $7,000. Private schools said, I'll take it. And they normally spend about $9,000 to $10,000. I'll use those numbers. Somebody will correct me later. But for demonstrative purposes, that's about what happened. And they put the other $3 back into the general fund and then back into education. That's what sold me on it. We're going to move through quick. High schools with graduation rates lower than 80% must submit a plan to us. We've got to stop this. I hope I've got this right. 1,200 children dropped out, roughly 1,200 children dropped out of school last year. Dropped out of high school. Now, what type of future do they have? Now, what we did last year, we had a dual enrollment program where we said before that child drops out of school, let's put them in a community workforce training center. Let him be a welder, a plumber, an electrician. Let's honor those great craftsmen. My dad was a diesel mechanic. He was one of the best in the country. I know because other people told me. And we were proud of that. Your dad's the best diesel mechanic I've ever met. Boy, what a sense of pride that was. I had a level of success in my family if you owned your own tools. I had the great opportunity of going to some tremendous schools with some tremendous teachers. Worked hard. Have a couple of degrees from a couple of colleges, had an opportunity to teach college level, had some level of success in the political world. We can do this. What we're doing now is just simply not working. And so if you will help us continue to work for jobs for Mississippi graduates, $1 million there. They have a 93% success rate with kids about to drop out of school. 93%, I'll take that. If you look at Teach for America, again, these kids, and I say kids because they look like kids to us, they come from all over America to teach here, to be a part of this system, and they do such a remarkable job. Career and technical education in high schools. It's not just shop anymore. They don't just make birdhouses like most of us did. All of us took that birdhouse home and our mothers pretended to like it. We teach them modern skills. Because I can tell you, as I go about bringing business and expanding our existing businesses and going globally around the world, they want to know how is your educational system, not only for the children that they may bring here, but for the workforce. Now, just now I can tell you we have the best workforce in America. I know that because I talked to Mr. Toyota. I talked to Alexis Mordechef. I talk to people who bring their businesses here who say, this is a phenomenal. I was in Aurora the other day. Aurora Flight Services, 250 more in the aerospace industry. We have a tremendous workforce. Now, we've got to keep moving ahead. We've got to educate these children. There's some ideas here that make people uncomfortable. We're not going to get them all through the first year. But if MEC will help, if we'll just simply say, let's move education forward. Let's do something. Don't stand by anymore. This is too important for us to ignore. I believe at the end of this session, we will all look back and say that is the moment that we made the difference. MEC, as always, was a great part of it. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Thank y'all. Oh, it's good to see everybody. I was thinking while you were talking, Phil, if you get to be governor with a 19 ACT, that means Secretary of State's a 15. Too long in our state, and I'll get to my prepared remarks here in a second, but too long in our state we have said we need to do something about education. Listen to Governor Bryant. We need to do something. He is going to be fighting a lot of entrenched people here, other ideas, that kind of thing, to keep the status quo. We need to support this plan. We need to get out, every single one of us, and make sure the legislature understands we're not going to keep the status quo because it's not working. And too many of us are blessed to have grandchildren and children that are going to rely on the decisions that he's making. We need to get behind Governor Bryant's plan. Speaking of the legislature, and thank you. You know, this year it took a couple of legislators less than 24 hours in the legislative session to start a process to take money away from school children. Only 2 days to get started on that. They want to take oversight for 16th section. Blake was just talking about that, and I want to talk about it. They want to take oversight for 16th section away from any statewide official. They want to give it back to school boards, just the local school boards. They want to go back to sweetheart deals, friendly deals on the side, no bid contracts, just like it used to be just a few years ago. Since I took office on 16th section land, the revenue has increased by $17 million a year, and as you well know, that's in a down economy. It's up from $54 million a year in 2007 to to $71 million a year just this last year. In addition to that, North Mississippi, who sold its 16th section lands, they get another $20 million in lieu payments for that. What 16th section lands are is a $91 million business, and it needs to be run like a business. We've increased our oil and gas revenue from 1/8 to 3/16. That will provide oil and gas royalty income for generations of Mississippi school children. We audit oil and gas payments. One school district just got a check for $253,000 that was erroneously calculated by the company. One school received just that much money, and as we go through, we'll be looking at the others. We audit timber cuts from the Secretary of State's office. One man's been indicted. We intend to have him prosecuted for stealing timber from Mississippi children. We help manage with the Mississippi Forestry Commission over $1 billion of timber assets across the state. And we now have a viable management plan for every section in the state. When we're going to cut, when we're going to harvest, who we're going to sell to. Timber revenues are up $12 million a year since I started taking over that. There's not one school board that I know of that has a certified forester as a member. The relationship between the Mississippi Forestry Commission, the Secretary of State's office, and the local school boards are producing revenue like we've never seen before on a $1 billion asset. We manage 640,000 acres of 16th section land. It's your land. We make every transaction transparent. You want to know how much somebody paid for a timber cut? You can go on my website. What was the hunting lease? What was the commercial lease? Go on my website. It's all there. It never was there before. So you'll know how much is paying for somebody's paying for your land, your timber, and your oil and gas revenues. We're becoming the source where people look to see comparables, and they should be. But instead of running this like a business, there are just a few people in the legislature who want to run it just like their own candy store, just like it used to be. You need to listen to me. Make no mistake, if we go back to sweetheart deals, just like we used to have, there's still going to be the cost of education. And that cost of education is going to be paid by you if we go back. When you talk to your legislators, when you're in the Capitol today, you ask each and one of them to commit to running your 16th section land like the $91 million a year business it is. Don't let them go back to the old ways. Speaking of legislation, and I appreciate the fact that Blake was giving us a compliment on that, I want to cover just a couple of things. Mark's here in the front, and he's very familiar with this. The first is, in our university system, about 80% of the revenue for research comes from the federal government. 80% of that. They've had a dramatic loss in revenue. In the last 2 years alone, we have lost $178 million in research money in Mississippi universities. That's a staggering number for them to try to make up. Of that $178 million, that's a 30% decrease in just 2 years. Only 7% of all research comes from private business. In Mark's University, in the University of Mississippi, the University of Southern Mississippi, all of those only get 7% of their revenues for research from private businesses. We need to incentivize you, Mississippi's businesses, to put the money back in our university system. That money's not going to be available there from the federal government anymore. This legislative session, we're proposing a SMART bill, Strengthen Mississippi Academic Research Business Act. The SMART Business Act. Under that, you will get a 25% rebate for every research dollar you sign on with the university. We need to keep our research where it is now, our university research, at world-class levels. We need to hold tuition costs down. Y'all saw in the paper today, Pell Grants are down. We need to keep the tuition costs down to make it available to our students. And we need to give students meaningful work experience, so when they get out, they've got something to sell, an education and work experience. That credit is going to be a key member of what we're going forward this year with our legislative agenda. There'll also be a headquarters and a relocation credit that will be proposed. That's to expand our headquarters in Mississippi, expand people that build within our businesses, within our borders. We're also going to propose an employee pass-through, where if you've got a jobs credit at your business, you can pass that through to your employees. That's an innovative way for you to pass through credits you're not using right now to employees who need the money. It's effectively a raise for the employee, and it gives you the full option of whether to take it at the corporate or LLC level or give it to your employees. That's the kind of things I want the decision for you to make, to be in your hands. With fiscal cliffs and debt ceilings, uncertainty in our economy is what's the drag on your business. This year, Mississippi is projected to grow 1.4% this year. That's in pockets. The population centers will grow more. Some of our rural areas will grow less. The only thing the federal government was able to agree on was to raise your taxes just 2 weeks ago. Since I have been Secretary of State, I've reduced my budget by $1.5 million a year. The federal government has not reduced its budget by $1.5 million ever. We are coming to a critical juncture in the amount of debt that our country, that our businesses, and that our citizens can carry. And while I currently don't have a vote in what the federal government does, along with Governor Bryant, I have a duty and a responsibility to do our fiscal house right. I intend to do that, and I know all of the other members of the state and our legislature do as well. We'll have a balanced budget, just like you do, and we'll work hard to make sure your tax dollars are well spent. Thank y'all for having me. Y'all have a great day in the Capitol.
These businessmen and women realize that the status quo for Mississippi is not acceptable. We've got to make bold moves in education. We did so 30 years ago. We can do so again, particularly when it depends on jobs, and that's certainly what the bottom line is: economic development, jobs for the future, and an educated workforce.